All right, audio is live. All right, guys, can you hear me okay? I'm testing out the audio, so I'm still reading the comments, just making sure, but everybody hear me okay? Post something in the chat box there on the right if you can, or if you can't, either way, hopefully you should be able to hear me. 100 degrees in Nashville. Oh, it's brutal. All right, audio is great. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the feedback. Loud and clear. Perfect. All right, a few more minutes just to get everybody a couple more minutes to sign on, and then we're going to get jamming. All right, guys, I'll give a little bit more audio checks. I see a couple of you were not quite hearing the audio. Sound is fine. And most of it sounds like everybody's good, but might have some issues if you're on an iPad or your computer. Just got to check, make sure that you've got the audio, the volume turned up. Kenneth, there should be sound. It seems like everybody's hearing it, so I just want to make sure you can hear it as well. Do your wireless headphones work with this? I have no idea. This is just a standard, basically it's just a browser, it's audio coming through a browser. So if you listen to anything else on your iPod or computer, you should be able to hear me just fine. So iPad audio sounds good, all right. Wally, if you've got no sound, check your device. We've got a few more minutes. Somebody from Coeur d'Alene, awesome. I used to live in Coeur d'Alene, I love it there. Hear me loud and clear. So yeah, a couple of you are saying no audio. So make sure you check your device. We've got a couple more minutes before we get started here. Somebody said they had to reconnect and now it works. So you might try that. If you had no sound, try reconnecting. It could be just an issue with your browser or your device. Sounds good on 3 devices here. Good, good. I don't know if you wanted to. You can actually see all of this on your computer if you wanted to. Yeah, where do I go? No, it's all right. No, worry about it. It's all right. I'm here. I'm live. All right. Breaking up in Seattle. Check your bandwidth or your device there. If the audio is not quite, what's up with your hair? It's just my hair. Come on, guys. Everybody's giving me a hard time about my hair. Especially when I grow it out even longer. But all right, guys, it's 7 o'clock. So let's get jamming here. So first things first, most importantly, I just want to say thank you. You guys have been awesome throughout this whole process of launching this boot camp and helping me develop it and giving me all your feedback. It's been amazing to listen to everything you guys have had to say and help me shape this, because you guys are really at the core of making this what it's going to be all about, which is making you the best golfer you can possibly be in the shortest time humanly possible. And that's what we're going to do. And so I'm not going to waste any time talking today. We're going to jump right in. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what to expect, what we're going to go through today, and then we're going to jump right in and we're going to get jamming. So first things first, from a housekeeping perspective, just a reminder, tonight's the first night of the boot camp, and then we're going to go every Tuesday night for the next 3 weeks at 7 o'clock Mountain Time, and then every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time for the next 3 weeks. Each session is in your handout that we gave you. We've got the first slide up here. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But that is going to be the structure. So the same link that you have to get in should be the same for each one of these webinars. You should only have to register once. But again, this is a beta test. We're making sure we get all the bugs worked out. So if you have any issues, just contact us at support and we will take care of everything. But hopefully it seems like most everybody got in, so we're ready to go. So the structure of this is going to be straightforward and simple and very similar to how I would give an in-person lesson. But the most important thing is that the first half of the hour is about doing the work. It's doing the drill. So I want you up. You notice I'm not wearing golf clothes. I'm in comfortable shorts and a shirt, because I want to feel free to move. If I may sweat a little bit because I'm working, I'm doing drills, that's totally fine. So you don't need to wear golf attire or anything like that. You do have to have a mirror. You have to be able to see what you're doing. You guys know how big of a deal that is to me. So I have my giant mirror here for face on, and then I have my iPad here because it's hooked up to the live view that we put out last week, because I've really kind of fallen in love with this thing, to be honest. So it's just so simple. Now I can see myself face on and down the line with my live view camera here on my iPad. So now I have both views. Because what I find a lot of times when people, and I'll walk you through this for those of you that don't have two mirrors or a live view or what have you, I'll walk you through the things that you typically will miss when you're just looking at one thing, just looking at it from one view. So we'll come back to that stuff. I'll bring that up as we go through. That's where this boot camp is really helpful. It's all these little things that add up to really big things, like we're going to talk about there. So mirror, you have to have a mirror. Now, so the first half, it's all practice. We're going to be doing the drills. I'm going to be walking you through. I'm going to talk you through every single little nuance, every critical little detail that you have to do to make this drill work for you and be super effective. So I'm going to walk you through all of that stuff as we go through for the first half hour. After that, we will open up the last half hour to all Q&A. Now, I know a lot of you are already writing questions. I have a screen back here behind the camera so I can see some of them, but my eyes aren't that good. I'm getting too old. So I won't be able to read all of them as I'm talking, but as I go through each piece that I walk you through, then I will stop. I'll go back and try to get some of the questions on there and answer some of the ones as we go through that are pertinent to the specific stuff that we're talking about. So if you have questions that you're going to post in the chat box, please make sure it's specific to what we're talking about. So if we're talking about, what we're doing today, it's all backswing stuff. We're not going to talk about release questions because we want to keep it really, really focused on just what we're trying to do, because there's a very specific pathway that I want to walk you through in the next 21 days that's going to help you learn. So I don't want you to be distracted and worrying about stuff that doesn't matter yet. So save those questions. I'll tell you when it's time to ask questions so that you can post them up there and I can make sure I try to answer as many as I can. At the end, if we don't have a lot of Q&A, a lot of questions there, I'm going to open it up for those of you who have webcams and want to get live help with me, and I'll be able to put you up on the screen. Now, yes, everybody will be able to see you, so you can't be camera shy. But of course, it's totally optional. So if you want me to be able to see your swing and help you make these little corrections, or you've got a question, this wasn't totally clear, Chuck, how do I do this, do that? I'll open that up at the end. You'll have to do a speaker request. And again, I know this is new technology for you guys. We've tested this for the past several months, but it's still new for us too. So we'll work out all the bugs together and we'll get it dialed in, but we will make sure that I'll answer as many live video requests as I can. So that's the gist of it. So now I want you to make sure too that you have your printout with you that I have up on the screen. We've got 2 slides that we're going through today. This is a little bit different because I'm not focusing just on the movement today, the first part of the dead drill, because I have to make sure that you're also set up correctly. We don't have to be set up every little detail and every 1/10 of a degree perfect, but we've got to get you in the ballpark. You've got to be in the zip code so that when you're doing these drills, you're not doing them from an incorrect position. So you know how I am about axis tilt and stance width. All of those things have to be in the ballpark to make certain that you are doing these drills and getting the proper feelings from the proper setup. So the first thing we're going to start with today is all about setup. Now, there's 4 critical checkpoints for the setup that you should have on your handout. So the first one, stance width. Stance width is so important for weight shift. And obviously I have videos on the site for stance width, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through all the details of them, but I'm going to point out the highlight stuff that I want to make sure that you're doing correct while we're doing these drills. Of course, you can use the reference videos to get into the setup and those types of things, the details of it, such as axis tilt, posture, weight distribution, etc. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So if you guys are ready, hop up from your computer, stand up, and let's get moving here. But first, let's get set up right. So from face on, the biggest thing that I want to make sure that you do, and if you have a club, obviously you don't need a club today to practice what we're doing, but a club is a good reference point for making sure you have the proper axis tilt. So I'm going to run through a basic setup routine that's on the site and in the other video details already, but this will help you understand how to do this really quickly. So while you're doing these drills, you just make sure you're set up right. So axis tilt is the first one. You know that if you hold the club up against your sternum and your belt buckle, and you just slide your hips to the left until the club hits you in the knee, then we're golden. That's all the axis tilt that you need. It makes it really simple. So just stand straight up, hold the club, slide your hips. Now you guys know a lot of times what people do, instead of sliding their hips, they just tilt their spine. That's side bend. That's taking your spine out of neutral. So we want to keep your spine in neutral and just slide it to the left. Of course, you need to do this with a proper stance width. If you're standing really wide, well, now you're going to have a crazy amount of tilt. So again, if you're not sure how wide your stance should be, go back and look at the details about how to get a proper stance width, which should be about 2 inches outside of neutral joint alignment. So you do neutral joint alignment, slide to the left, boom, we're done. Now, from down the line, it's really important that you can make sure that your spine is in neutral as you hinge forward, because it's very tempting just to kind of round our shoulders and get into this slouch posture, which is going to inhibit our mobility. So take this club, put it up against your head, and hold it down here against your belt. And as you hinge forward, make sure that your middle of your back and your head and your belt, they don't ever move away from the shaft. This will just make sure that your spine is staying nice and neutral. So now I look at myself face on, I'm going to make sure I have axis tilt. And I look at my iPad with the live view, and I make sure that my spine has stayed nice, and it's not flat, of course, it has curvature in it, but it's going to look more flat if you're used to being really slumped forward at a dress. So make sure that your chest is nice and open, you're standing nice and tall, and you hinge forward from your hip sockets. Remember, we don't bend from our waist, we hinge forward from the hip socket to get into a good posture. So it's a quick rundown on setup. Again, we have reference videos down here that you guys can look at after this. Of course, you can look at them anytime. That will go into all the details in case you're not sure. But do you have any questions? I'll open up just for a couple minutes. Any questions on setup, just so I can make sure that nobody gets lost on making sure we're set up correctly. So I'll step back to the screen so I can see it. Should you feel any pinch in your side? Absolutely not. If you feel any pinch in your lumbar, your lower back area, your sciatic stuff, that's side bend. That's taking your spine and curving it, bending your spine, instead of keeping your spine in neutral and sliding your hips to the left, to your lead side, and then your spine just tilts back as a result. You don't try and bend to the side. You let your spine fall to the side as a result of your hips moving laterally. That's what creates axis tilt. So it's a good question. No pain for sure. Some of the videos are not open to regular members. All of the videos that are on these slides are all open to premium members, so you should have access to all of those. How much weight on front and back foot? Good question. So you should be more or less 50-50. Now, don't get caught up in making this an exact percentage thing. As you move your weight or you move your hips to the lead side, the left side for right-handed golfers, you will feel a little bit more pressure increasing on that left side, really common. But remember, you're counterbalancing it because as your upper torso falls to the side, that's actually counterbalancing the weight to the other side. So it will remain about 50-50, but if you feel a little bit more pressure on the lead side, that's perfectly okay. Let's see, 4 inches, just make sure I get all the last questions. Left-handed. Should axis tilt happen naturally when you place left hand on the club? It can, but you really want to make sure you're not trying to set up axis tilt based on what you're doing with your arms. You're doing it with your body. So don't think of it that way. Get your body set up correctly first. Which eye should remain on the ball? That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I totally understand what you're asking, but your eyes are going to move because your spine is falling to the side. So I don't know exactly what you mean as far as that goes, as far as which eye should be on the ball. Maybe you can rephrase that and I'll try to get back to it. What if you feel more weight on the right side? Typically, Paul, if you feel more weight on the right side, you didn't move your hips, you just added side bend. So if I just bend my spine, I feel way more weight on the right side, but I didn't. That's me adding side bend, not axis tilt. Axis stays straight, I slide my hips, my spine falls back as a result. Which eye is dominant watching the ball? That's totally dependent on you. Everybody's different. Some people are right eye dominant, some people are left eye dominant. Let's see, does over tilting cause a hook? It can, but that's way outside the scope of what we're doing right now. We're not worrying about ball flight, we're worrying about getting you set up correctly. How much forward hinge? Great question. That's covered in detail on the setup videos. So I won't go into too much depth about that, but essentially you're hinging forward far enough so that you can see the golf ball without changing your spine by dipping your head forward. If your head stays in neutral and you keep hinging forward until the club hits the ground and your eyes can see the ball, then that's how much forward bend you need. It'll be different for every club. Let's see. As far as the order and sequence, that's covered on the site videos. So let's see, any more questions? Should be squatting down. No, you should not be squatting down. Please look at the setup video. So all of that stuff, that's why we put these reference videos in there, because it really covers all of these questions. So I'm just going to kind of glean through them. If it's something that's not necessarily answered in the videos, I'll answer it here. But otherwise, make sure that you go back and check out those videos. Charles, as far as putting your foot out, again, covered in the videos. Should you splay your feet? It's covered in that video. Can you stand too tall? Absolutely. You feel your head is too far behind the ball with axis tilt. Well, where is the ball position would be my first question. So again, there's a video on the site specifically for ball position. So if you feel your head's too far behind the ball, it may be, again, it's common if you add too much side bend. But if you're doing something that's unusual for you, for your setup, you're not used to having axis tilt, for example, which most golfers aren't, you may feel that your head is too far behind the ball. But the way you check that, the mirror never lies, right? So if you're not certain, then all you need to do is look in the mirror, get set up correctly, and then drop the club from the side of your ear. And if it drops down at the back of the ball, then the ball's in the right spot, assuming you have a proper stance width and proper axis tilt. So don't be too concerned about what you feel right now, because for many of you, this stuff will be new. And if it's new, it'll feel different. And that's perfectly okay. In fact, that's actually a good sign, because you're not doing the same stuff that got you here in the first place. So that's really important. All right, so let's make sure, I think I've got everything going here for now. We can come back to more setup questions at the end. I just don't want to waste a bunch of time going over stuff that's really covered in detail on the site already. So that's why it was really important for everybody to be a premium member of the site already, because all of this stuff is already covered in great detail and much longer, hours of content on going into each little piece in detail. So setup stuff, that's the gist of it. If you want to take notes, now would be a good time for that. But I'm going to start moving forward to the next piece, which is the important stuff. What we're really here for is how to start moving correctly, how to start moving like a pro and moving efficiently with our body. We have some critical checkpoints that we're going to talk about with the backswing stuff. And that's why we're spending the entire session and the rest of this week until Saturday just on getting these backswing parts dialed in. It's really, really important. But what's really cool about it is it's really simple. If you just hit these 4 critical checkpoints that I'm going to talk about, your whole backswing is going to fall into place, and it's going to be so easy, and you're going to be able to repeat this over and over again for the rest of your life without having to think about it. So that's what really our goal is. So in the pictures that I sent you guys in the handout, I'm going to walk through these critical checkpoints that I want to talk about. So one of the first things that we're going to do today is learning how to rotate correctly during the backswing without our head moving all over the place. And now this is one of the most common things I see in both my online lessons and in-person lessons, is that people start trying to learn how to rotate, and they rotate like this. This does not work in golf. Your head has to stay centered. That's the first checkpoint, is making sure that your head is not moving too far in any direction off the ball. Now, there's a little bit of a leeway there. I don't mind the head moving an inch, inch and a half or so, but any more than that, and you start adding so much variability into the swing, you make it too difficult. We want the swing to be stupidly simple, really, really easy, really repeatable, so we don't want our eyes moving all over the place. So the simplest and best drill for this that I have that's on the site is the first one here, beating your head against the wall. Because that's what it feels like if your head's moving all over the place and you're trying to hit a golf ball. The golf ball might as well be moving. So the wall drill makes this really, really simple. So if you have a wall close by for you, I can put my head on the mirror for now, it doesn't matter where it is, but you just want to have something where you have a reference point that your head is going to stay fixed. Now, it's going to move a little bit. That's okay. So you don't want to put your head up against a concrete wall and start dragging your head back and forth. But as you're doing this drill, you want it to move very, very little or not at all. If you don't let it move at all, you'll have a tendency to get a little tilty with your shoulders, which I'll explain in a moment. But for now, if you have a wall, all I want you to do is practice putting your head up against your forehead up against the wall, and then taking your right shoulder and pulling it behind your head. Now, if you can do this without your head dragging across the wall or dragging across the mirror, then all of a sudden your swing will probably feel really, really different. So do that a few times for me. I'm going to give you a couple moments. I'm going to walk you through a couple more things as you're doing this. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. All I want you to focus on is putting your head against the wall, pulling your right shoulder against or back behind your head. Tell me what you guys feel as you're doing that, especially if it feels really different if you haven't done this drill before. So do the drill for a couple moments, and I'm going to let you guys ask a couple questions about this before we move on to adding the next checkpoint. All right, any questions so far on feeling your head staying centered as you start rotating back and pulling that right shoulder behind your head? How much rotation is too much? You only need to rotate about 90 degrees. So you're going to look, when you look at yourself face on, so I'll do this so you guys can see me. I want to see my right shoulder on the left side of my head as a right-handed golfer. If you're lefty, you want to see your left shoulder blade on the right side of your head. If you turn 90 degrees, that's plenty, we're done. Tracy misses drill, so great. Yeah, should this be done with axis tilt? Absolutely, great question, Bill. You absolutely want to do everything from a proper setup. The whole goal of what we're doing here is we're teaching you how to do one drill, the only drill that you ever need to do again. If you just do this one drill perfectly 3,000 times, your body's going to know how to swing like a pro. But the whole point of it is that we have to keep repeating the exact same movements from the same setup every single time. It doesn't do us any good to do this drill with no axis tilt, right? So everything we're going to do throughout the entire 21-day boot camp is stacking one piece on the other. We're just building a foundation right now. The foundation starts with the proper setup, and then it's all about getting this backswing going. So yes, you should always be set up the same way, with proper stance width, proper axis tilt as you're doing each of these drills. Great question. Feels off balance with tilt. Yes, Lynn, that's a common thing, and I'm going to explain why in just a moment as we start talking about the shoulder plane. So it might feel a little bit different when you're doing this drill, but I'm going to explain why. Let's see. It's the best way to feel that my feet aren't stuck to the ground. Fran, I'm not totally sure what you mean there, but one of the best ways that I like to get the feeling for my students to start moving their feet. If you just pick up your feet, it's amazing how simple the communication with your nervous system is. If we're standing here froze over the ball, everything starts building tension. Just pick up your feet. Such a simple thing. But as soon as you do this, you waken up your nervous system. You start communicating with your body some energy. You start getting it to move. So if you feel stuck, just start moving around. That's all it is. Simple fix. Let's see. Should I squeeze or activate my abs? Thomas, great question. I don't want you to feel tension. Now, we need our abs to be pulled in to help support our lower back, but you don't want to feel tight. You want to feel fluid and relaxed so that you can move very effortlessly. Let's see. Sorry, I'm reading a couple more questions here, trying to get to everybody. What body part rotates the upper body? All right, good. That's a really good question. So, and let's start talking about rotation and getting this stuff together. So I have the wall drill. So anytime you guys are working on this, I really like for you to do the wall drill if you know that your head has a tendency to move off the ball, because that is a do not pass go, do not collect $200 kind of thing. If your head's moving on every single drill, we're wasting our time. We're making it worse. Our head has to stay very, very quiet throughout the whole swing. That's the best way to do it. I'm going to come back to some of these questions in just a moment, but I want to go through this in sequence for the reason that we have it up here. So somebody asked, what is it that we're using to rotate? Well, the simplest way to think about it, I've talked about it many times on the side, is taking that right shoulder and pulling it behind your head so that you're not pushing from the left side, which causes you to turn flat and so on. But your primary movers are your obliques. These are the muscles on the side of your torso that rotate your rib cage. And so the best way to feel that is the chair drill on the side, which I have on your slide here. This chair drill, and even if you don't have a chair right now, you can do this exact same drill and get the same feeling without a chair just by squatting down. If you squat down, your hips can no longer rotate here. So if I just try and rotate my rib cage, you'll see that my hips are kind of locked in place, which is the whole point of the chair drill. It's just a lot more tiring to sit here and squat and do this. But you get the same feeling of learning how to rotate your rib cage and move your torso while feeling you're pulling your right shoulder behind your head. It's no different than if somebody said, hey, Chuck, what are you doing? And you turn to look at them, you would rotate your whole rib cage just without your hips doing all the work. So you really want to feel your obliques, your core muscles starting to be the primary movers as you rotate back. So hopefully that helps make sense there. And if you don't get the feeling of it, use the chair drill because it'll make this really, really easy because that's the only muscles you can use to rotate your body then. It's just really important that you get the feeling of staying centered without pushing from the left side or the lead side. That's the most important thing. So just see if there's any questions there. Discomfort in the trail knees at turn 90 degrees. I'm going to talk about the knees in just a moment. How those left shoulder go. We're going to get to that in just a second. So good questions. So first thing we're doing, we're rotating that rib cage back. Now somebody mentioned that their knee feels some discomfort. You should not feel any discomfort, any pain whatsoever doing any of this stuff. So let's talk about what causes the knee pain the most common way because it's specific to what we're doing today. Now, one of the most important things that you have to feel as you're making this rotation movement is that you maintain the right hip line. Now, I talk about that in great detail on the website, but I'm going to show you quickly how to feel and fix it so that you start getting rid of if you have hip pain, knee pain, back pain, it's really common that it's just letting your right hip line change throughout the swing. So if you have a chair or a countertop, or in my case, I've just got a set of clubs laying here, and all I want to do is have something to act as a reference point. So all I'm going to do is put my right hip, my right thigh, up against this club here. Now, if I rotate back, and I rotate incorrectly, my hip is going to move away from that. So now I have what we call the old reverse hip shift. This is a terribly weak position to be in, and so many golfers do this. The other way that people make a mistake is they let their hips slide this way. So now we start getting into the old reverse pivot. So you can see neither one of these look very desirable, right? But if I put my right hip up against this and I just keep it there, well, now all of a sudden, if I focus on pulling my right shoulder behind my head and my right hip stays against these clubs, well, now I've got everything working for me and I only have to worry about one more thing, and that's the angle of my shoulders. Now, one of you mentioned that you have some knee pain. Knee pain typically is caused by you not letting your weight move back onto your ankle as you start going back. You tend to keep the weight on the ball of your foot, which is really, really common. So as you start rotating back and you're working on pulling that right shoulder behind your head, you may feel that your heel almost gets so light that it wants to come up in the air, and you'll move your primary balancing joint from your hip socket to your knee, and your knee can't rotate very well. So you've got to make sure that you move your weight back onto your ankle, push that ankle into the ground, and then you shift your primary balancing joint to your hip socket, and so now your glute is stabilizing you instead of you trying to do this with your knee. So hopefully if you have any hip pain or knee pain, that should help fix it. All right, so I'm going to answer any more questions here real quick. Let's see. How does axis tilt work with the right hip line drill? Shouldn't change anything at all, right? I have axis tilt, so as I get set up properly, I'm going to shift my hips to the left. I just have to shuffle back so that my right hip's on here. Now you guys can see that there's clearly axis tilt. And as I rotate back, exactly the same. So it shouldn't change a thing. Let's see, do we keep the right shoulder loose when we pull it back? Yeah, James, great question. And that is one of our checkpoints up here. So James is asking, he has a tendency for his right shoulder to kind of what we call elevate in the backswing. Creates a lot of tension in your trap. That's what this image is for. And I said, mind the gap. Your spacing between your right ear and your right shoulder for right-handed golfers should be depressed and as far away as you can get it. If you look like this at the top of your backswing, this is no bueno. We're totally disconnected from our core. So as we're doing these drills, if you look like this, you've lost the gap. You want that shoulder as you go back to stay relaxed and down. So now you can see the space between my ear and my shoulder is just like it was at address. We want to maintain that throughout the whole swing. How much flexion should you remain in the right knee versus straight knee? Great question, Bill. So you're going to lose a little bit of knee flex. That's normal. However, you don't want that knee completely straightening up. That's why I wore shorts. So you can see my white chicken legs. And as I go back, this is no good. This is not a powerful position. I've completely disengaged my glute, my hamstring, my quad, and now I have nothing to help me get going the other way. So we don't want to lose all of that, and we don't want to have a crazy amount of flex. So as I go back, I'm going to lose a little bit of knee flex, and that's it. But I still clearly have knee flex in here, which is what I'm demonstrating here. That's really important. We want to keep that glute engaged. We want to keep muscles engaged. So make sure that it's okay to lose a little bit of flex, but you shouldn't lose much. Paul, hip pain. What about hip pain? You should definitely not feel hip pain. So if you're feeling hip pain, your joints are somewhere being tweaked or out of alignment. So if you have hip pain, my first guess would be you're not maintaining that right hip line, because if you are, you'll be balancing on your hip socket, which is designed to rotate correctly. Well, if you're feeling hip pain, you're probably not maintaining that hip line. You're sliding one way or the other, and that will cause pain every single time. Let's see. What do you mean under hips get turned but don't restrict them? Great question. So your hips have two ways of helping you make a backswing. They can do all the work for you, which I call the lazy man's way, or they can get pulled into the swing, which is the right way. And what we mean by that is, it's really easy for me. I'm going to get in my little posture here, golf setup, and I just turn my hips. Well, I've made a full shoulder turn, but I've made a huge hip turn. And more importantly, I didn't load or engage any of the muscles in my core whatsoever, because I turned my hips and my shoulders together. So what I'm trying to do in the golf swing, as you guys know, I'm trying to recruit muscle fiber. At the end of the day, muscle is what moves that golf club and moves it quick. If you don't have any muscle to use to recruit from your body, then you have nothing to move the club quickly with. So what we're doing by saying don't move your hips to move the backswing, move your upper body. So I'm going to do it really slow, and you can kind of use the logo on my short here, see how little my hips are moving at first. They're getting moved, but you'll notice that my shoulders turn twice as far in the same amount of time, which means they have to initiate the movement. So as they start going back, my hips get moved, but the movement, the primary movement, is coming from my core. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. Just realized I'm completely losing my axis tilt in the backswing. Super common, Eric. That's why we use that necktie drill, which is one of the reference videos here, right? So I don't have a necktie on. I only own one tie to begin with, and I don't want to get it dirty today. So here's what I want you to feel. If you don't have a necktie on, use a club as a reference point. So, right, we've already got the club because we're checking our axis tilt. Now I know I have tilt. And now as I go to the top, and if this club now looks like this and is draping off my belly, and instead of hanging freely off my chest, I don't have enough axis tilt. So make sure that you maintain axis tilt as you go back. It's super, super important. Let's see. Feels like I shift weight, but my head goes left. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but what typically happens if your head, I'm assuming you're right-handed, if your head is going left, it means your hips are going right. Everything in the swing is a cause and effect relationship. So let's just say I'm set up this way, and he's saying his head's going this way. Well, how would I do that? Well, my hips, I'd have to lose my right hip line by sliding this way and reverse pivot. That's the only way your head could go left, right? Let's see, is it okay to move downward in the backswing? Jeff, be careful with that one. You don't need to load up like that. You don't need your head dropping down like you're coiling like that. Your head could go down a little bit, but it should be very, very subtle. Tension in the right hamstring. I don't like the word tension per se, but should there be some engagement there? Sure. You may feel a little bit in your hamstring, especially if you have tighter hamstrings. That's okay. Feels like my weight is transferred only 60%. Keep going, buddy. Focus on increasing pressure. Think about pushing that right leg into the ground. Don't worry so much about a percentage of weight shift. Think of it as a percentage of pressure. Because a lot of times when people think about shift, they start moving their whole body or moving their hips. Think about actively pushing that leg into the ground to help you feel the proper amount of shift. Shoulder plane angle. I'm going to get over that in just a second. That's what I'm going to talk about next. Just making sure we got most of the big questions out of the way. Let's see. Should the left knee moving forward? It does move forward. I have that in the laser beam drills down here. It's one of your reference videos talking about how much the knees should move and where they're moving. John, if you can't get to 90 degrees when you're going statically, let's just say that you get to maybe 80, that's okay, because when you have the momentum of the club and the arms later on, that tends to help you finish a full turn. However, if you're only getting maybe halfway, then it's almost always because you're either pushing from the left side, so you feel tension, or you're not letting your hips turn enough. Your hips have got to turn. Well, not nobody, but most people don't have nearly 90 degrees of flexibility to make a full shoulder turn without their hips moving at all. So if you can't finish your turn and you feel like you've done everything correctly, just let your hips finish it for you. It's okay to let your hips turn a little bit extra to finish your swing. Do I push the weight into the ground first or at the same time as the turn? Great question, and there is no wrong or right way to do it. It's a personal preference thing. If you want to think about shifting or pushing weight right away into the right side, that's okay. In fact, that's actually what I prefer to do, because when you think about it in the swing and the sequence of things, what's the first thing that needs to happen in the downswing? Well, you've got to shift back to the left, right? So if you want to have everything loaded up in time to make sure that you can shift back to the left, then it's okay to load it immediately in the swing so that it gives the head start to move back in the downswing. Let's see. Great with the ball. Without the ball, how many reps till the little white devil doesn't matter anymore? That's what this whole boot camp is for, friends. Exactly what it's for, right? We want to boil everything down to one thing that we have to do right 3,000 times that we own it, right? That doesn't mean you're not going to be great at it in just a couple hundred reps. The little white ball, though, we're going to introduce it sequentially later on in the boot camp so that we don't get overwhelmed and have too many distractions that our brain can't process at once. So, all right, so now let me jump into the shoulder plane. So we've talked about knee flex. We've talked about minding the gap, maintaining that shoulder, make sure that right shoulder stays depressed. Shoulder plane. Now, there is no special magic angle for your shoulders. The only angle that matters is that it's perpendicular to your spine. Because remember, we're trying to protect our spine, protect our joints throughout the whole swing, and not put ourselves at any extra risk for injury. So when I set up to the ball, you'll know that I have axis still, right? I'm going to do this from down the line. It'll be a little bit easier to reference here. So now, as I'm set up here, my shoulders should rotate 90 degrees to my spine. So you can see this shaft is roughly 90 degrees to my spine angle, right? This would be really steep, this would be really flat. Where people make the mistake is they start rotating really flat, and so now their left shoulder would be above the shaft plane or the shoulder plane line. It needs to rotate perpendicular to your spine, which means your left shoulder will go under the shaft. So a good way to do this, like especially if you're using a live view, put the club here, so I'm looking down at my iPad and I can see I've placed the shaft at roughly 90 degrees to my spine, and now as I rotate back, I just want to make sure that my left shoulder goes down underneath that shaft line. That's why having something, a mirror behind you or something that you can reference both directions is really, really helpful. Another way to get a feel for it is to take the club, put it across your shoulders, and just make sure that you feel like it's going down as you go back. It's not going to point at the ball. They're not that steep, but it also shouldn't point off in space or at your playing partner. That's too flat. So you got to make sure as you're pulling your right shoulder back that your left shoulder goes down. If you can put together your head staying centered, maintaining your right hip line, maintaining your axis tilt, and right shoulder going back while the left shoulder goes down, this entire backswing. That's all you need to be able to do, because as you'll see as we start stacking in the pieces later on during the boot camp, everything revolves around those four critical pieces. Left shoulder down, right shoulder back, maintain your knee flex, you're just right hip line, pushing that weight, increasing pressure on that right side. Your right shoulder is going to stay down. Nobody elevating their shoulder up to their head. Keep that right shoulder depressed and relaxed. Necktie drill. So you can see our right hip line here. If I had a necktie on, it would be hanging freely. It wouldn't be draping across my belly. And it'd be just about on the inside of my knee, right here. It would be perfect, because that lets me know I've maintained my axis tilt, and I can see my right shoulder behind my head. That's all it takes for a perfect backswing. Now, of course, just one note here just to remind you guys, my neck is all glued together inside, it's fused, so my head turns. Don't let your head turn unless your neck is fused. So for those of you who are seeing my head moving all over the place, just know that yours shouldn't be doing that. So everything that you need to know about the entire backswing is all contained right here. The wall drill, the necktie drill, all of those things are combined into this one movement. This is all we're doing. You're going to take this right shoulder, pull it behind your head stays relatively centered, my right hip didn't move, left shoulder went down, right shoulder went back, whole backswing. That's it. If you guys can put those things together, the backswing is going to be so simple, so easy to repeat, and that's all we have to do. So for this week, that's your main focus, is for the next 4 days before Saturday morning, is that you're going to own this movement. If you can go right shoulder back, maintain the hip line, maintain your tilt, we're golden. So now I can see both face on and down the line through my iPad here. See my right shoulder's back. I'm going to check this. For those of you who aren't sure if you're shrugging your shoulders back, go to the top, shrug your shoulder up as high as you can, and then depress it down. You'll feel the contrast between the two. You'll start to realize, oh, I do have tension here. I didn't realize that. Push it back down or pull it back down, and then you can see the space between your ear and your shoulders. Now, as I'm also checking down the line, I've got my shoulder plane, but I can start to watch this right knee now. It's really common for people to kind of get sloppy with these knees and let them straighten up, do all kinds of stuff. The knee can lose a little bit of flex, but you have to maintain some flex to keep that glute, hamstring, and quad engaged. So, any questions on what you're going to be working on this week? We've been going about 40 minutes so far, so I want to make sure I get to Q&A here so that I can make sure all your questions are answered before you start practicing on your own. Without head movement, should left shoulder move under the chin? The left shoulder gets moved under this chin by the torso rotating. You don't ever try and move your left shoulder and your chin. That would be pushing, right? So that's going to start leading you towards wanting to move off the ball too much. Let's see. Should each rep start with setup? You should always be set up correctly. Now, do you have to go through a setup routine per se? Not necessarily if you set up correctly every time, but if you don't, go through the setup routine. Hold the club up there. Make sure you have tilt. Hold it against your back. Make sure you're hinging from your hip. Go through the setup routine because there's no point in doing these reps wrong from a wrong setup position. Let's see. What about the left knee drifting forward? The left knee will get moved. Again, if you guys are moving from the body parts that we've talked about, taking the right shoulder and pulling behind your head, rotating your rib cage, the knees will simply get moved. If you're trying to move them somewhere, then there's a big problem because you're moving from the wrong part of your body during the swing. Your knees shouldn't move that much, but again, if you're unfamiliar with what they should do, check out that laser beam knee drill. It's really helpful. Let's see. Can you talk really quick about the right knee? Sorry, I didn't quite catch how much the right knee can move. Again, it just comes back to knee flex. You have to maintain some knee flex in there. It just makes everything so much easier and more automatic in the downswing. So it's okay for it to move a little bit. One thing I want to point out is that that right knee doesn't rotate very much. This is a really common thing. So I'll show my embarrassing white legs again, and I'll show you what happens a lot of times when people start getting sloppy with their lower body is their knee starts doing this. This is a horrible, horrible swing because there's no power or stability in this. So imagine, just like in the laser beam drill, the right knee's pointing at the ball and it stays there. Now, it's okay for it to rotate a little bit, but you're going to imagine it stays pointing at the ball the whole time in the backswing. Let's see. Sorry, some of these questions are coming through quicker than I can get to them. I'm going to make sure I try to get to all of them, though. Right balance. Barely see the right shoulder. That's okay, Jim. You don't need to be able to wrench this thing back. Again, as you add the club and the arms and momentum and speed and pace and all of that stuff, you'll make a free, fuller turn. So if you can just barely see that right shoulder on the side of your head, perfectly okay. It's all we need. Do I feel that turn the rib cage to 45 degrees? It's a great question. So this is a really, really common thing. People ask, how do I balance out how much my upper body turns and my lower body turns? Initiate things more so with your upper body. Because think of it this way. your shoulders have to turn twice as far as your hips do, right? That's standard golf understanding, right? Everybody knows that your shoulders turn about 90 degrees at the top and your hips turn about 45. So they have to turn twice as far in the exact same amount of time and space, which means we need to start with them first, typically. Now, if your hips start to move a little bit at the beginning, that's okay too. It's like they're frozen in space. We don't want that because that's just going to make you rigid and tense. I want you to be relaxed. So as I'm starting to move back, I'm going to do this in sequence. I want you to watch really closely because since you can see my legs and you can see my upper body, watch what happens if I make my normal swing. You'll see my knee starts to move pretty early, right? But it's not moving that much. I'm just not holding myself rigid and tight and frozen in place. As I start to pull my right shoulder back, my hips are going to start to get pulled in. But just make sure that you're not doing a lot of hip movement. It should feel that they're getting moved primarily by your upper body. Let's see, how do we get Fran? Chuck, how do we get Fran to quit? I didn't quit. So I guess Fran's really struggling with the golf ball. Don't worry, Fran. In 21 days, you're going to be able to hit that ball. No problem. You want to worry about it. So, all right, guys. Sorry, I know you keep posting questions. I'm going to keep getting you there. But don't worry about the little white devil right now, Fran. I promise we're going to take care of that. I have a plan to get you there, to be able to hit that little white devil. I promise it's all part of my evil genius plan here. So don't worry about it. Let's see. Okay. Does keeping the trail knee flex reduce the amount of timing needed in the swing? Certainly it can. If you're one of the golfers who lets their knees straighten up a lot, you've just added excess movement, right? Now it's just one more thing I've got to undo in the downswing. So certainly you know that my biggest valuable thing that I think in the swing is about simplifying the movements to as few as humanly possible that doesn't cost me any power. So the more variability you introduce to your swing, the more moving parts, the harder everything is. So we want to dumb all this stuff down. So you don't want to add any extra movement, and it will increase your dependency on timing. Let's see. Benjamin, can I do 5 reps? Sure. You guys want to do some reps with me real quick as we're going through this stuff? So I'm going to do them face on and down the line again so you guys can see me doing them. And then, of course, as you guys will all have access to this replay, later on, after this is over, you guys can watch this over and over again so that you can come back and revisit it. So I'll do all the movements with you so that you can see them and then come back and check them out. So I'm going to make sure my stance width is right, axis tilt, so on. Now, all I'm going to do is pull this right shoulder behind my head, make sure I'm increasing the pressure on my right leg, and my checkpoints, my feelings, are do I feel my glute engaged? If I feel my glute and I feel my obliques and my core, then I know I'm on the right track here. My head's staying right, nice and centered. It's okay to move a little bit. Mine's going to look like it moves a little bit more because it has to turn. But this is the whole goal. Now, when we go down the line, the same thing. As I'm looking in the mirror and looking up, now I can see both. As I'm doing this, checking my shoulder. Oh, the shoulder starts to get elevated. I'm going to shrug and depress to get the feeling of lengthening my traps so it stays nice and relaxed. Watching my right knee, is it straightening up a little bit? Of course, that's perfectly okay, but I'm maintaining flex in there. My right shoulder is staying down, and I can also look in the mirror in front of me and see if I'm maintaining my tilt. If my spine looks like this, that's too much tilt. Right now my necktie is hanging way out over my foot, and if my spine looks like this, I'm doing the opposite. So from down the line, I'm just checking my checkpoints. Right shoulder back, left shoulder down, feeling that right glute, pushing weight into the right side. That's all we need to really focus on. Let's see. Will we get into this sequence with the club? Frank, of course. Hopefully you've had a chance to go through this whole thing because I've shown you the whole secret game plan. It's all in there. So yes, we absolutely will do all the stuff with the club, just not today. You can do this exactly right, or there's no point. If you can't do this right without a club, you'll never, ever do it right with the club. So you need time to get these reps in, and that's why we're doing this in this format over the next 21 days. Does the left shoulder naturally go lower than the right, or do I make an effort to push it down? It should naturally go lower, but for many people, they don't realize that they're pushing from the left side and their left shoulder turns really flat. So that's why I'm just saying it's not that you're trying to make it go down, it's just rotating perpendicular to your spine. But you need to make sure that it is actually rotating perpendicular to your spine, which means the left shoulder will be lower than the right. If the right shoulder barely able to reach 90, will power be compromised? I just talked about that. It's okay as we're moving slowly that if your shoulder doesn't quite get all the way to 90 degrees, but you're in the ballpark, perfectly okay, because we don't have the momentum that's going to come from the club once we have that in there, which will help pull you around to a 90-degree turn. We talked about weight shift side to side. What about front to back? Good question, Kevin. So just make sure as you're going back, you're pushing weight down through the center of your ankle to the middle of your foot. Anywhere in this range is perfectly fine. You don't want to be on the ball of your foot. We talked about how it creates knee pain because you're shifting your primary balancing joint to your knee. And we don't want to be back on our heel. That's off balance in the other direction. So you want to be in this space between your ankle and the middle of your foot. That's where the majority of your weight should be. Does the weight shift happen automatically? That's totally dependent on the golfer. For some people it does, some people it doesn't. So just make sure that you're pushing weight into that right side. Do slow reps count as a rep? Good question, Jaleel. So first of all, absolutely. A rep is a rep. Now the goal is to start translating this into speed, which is part of your homework for this week. So as you go to the rep tracker in your slides, the next day is all about getting 100 reps a day in. These first 100 reps may be really slow because you can't do it fast yet. That's the whole point. You're learning something new. Some of you will be like, oh yeah, I've already watched all these videos. I've been drilling this for months or years or whatever. I know how to do it. So your goal is to go fast because that's the whole point. The swing has to move quickly. Everything has to be firing really, really fast in order to produce speed. So going at this pace, well, that's not really a golf swing yet. But if you can't do the movement correctly any faster than that, then you certainly do not want to go any faster yet until you feel that you can do those movements correctly and pick up the pace. So don't be ashamed if you got to go slow at first. Everybody did. I did. Everybody does. You have to go slow at first to get the movements correct so you can hit your checkpoint, so you can look in the mirror. Is my right hip line there? Did I maintain my axis tilt, etc.? And then as you start doing that, I want you to start challenging your brain to start adding pace to this. So as I'm doing these drills, at first, I'm only going to go fast enough that I can do it right. But I did that rep good, and I'm going to do 10, 20 of those as I was doing this. I'm just checking my checkpoints every time. And now I'm going to add some pace to it. Well, that's about the full pace of the backswing. That's perfectly fine. So as long as I can do it at that pace, still hit my checkpoints, look in the mirror that every single thing, my right hip, my axis tilt, my shoulders, is all spot on. I want you to go as fast as you can as long as you do it right. What does full speed look like? Good question. That's kind of what it was there. So if I was doing it with just my arms across my chest, there's the full speed. If I'm moving that fast, I'm going to have a lot of power in my swing. So if you can get to that pace, that's plenty fast. How do you restrict hip turn if over-rotating the backswing? You're moving from the wrong space. If you're moving from up here, like I talk about in the chair drill, your hips won't overturn. So you have to learn to move from the right place. So go back and take a look at that video. It'll really help you feel the right muscles to engage. Should we stop playing golf during the boot camp? Jeff, you definitely don't have to. However, understand that if you keep playing and you're repeating your same bad movements, then you're just kind of doing more harm than good, right? So if you're going to play, take what you're working on and focus on that while you're on the course. So before every ball that you might hit while you're waiting on your partner to hit, because I don't want you to play slow. I hate slow play. But if you're going to play fast while your partner's hitting, just do a couple backswing reps. Just keep getting this feeling of right hip line, right ankle, core rotation. And you can practice and play while doing this. Now, of course, just make sure that you're not, giving your brain more than it can handle and this starts to break down, because then you're just going to be wasting repetitions. But can you play while you're doing this? Absolutely. That's the goal. You just have to make sure you're focused on the right things. Let's see. I have a hard time keeping shoulders low when I add the club. Benjamin, don't add the club yet, right? If you're having a hard time doing it with that, we haven't stacked that piece on there, and there's a reason, there's a method to my madness with these 21 days. I'm going to get you to swinging as well as you can, as short as I can, but you have to follow the sequence. You need time for your brain to physically construct these pathways in your brain and then myelinate them through repetition. If you don't do that, you will not improve. So don't jump ahead if you're not at a point where your brain can handle what you're asking it to do. Let's see, anyone, let's see. All right, just make sure we're getting everybody's questions. So we got about, should we submit videos for review as part of this class? Jeff, great question. Absolutely. If you're not certain that you're hitting all your checkpoints or you just want to double check, use your swing reviews, use your URG members so that you can make sure that you have the feedback so that you're not wasting a single rep. That's what these guys are here for. Craig and Chris is on this call as well, so he knows exactly what he's asking, what's being asked of you guys to do, and he knows exactly how to hit these checkpoints and tell you how to fix them and what videos to recommend and so on. So for certain, if you're wanting to double check anything and you don't want to waste a single moment, a single rep, submit your swing for review and let these guys help you, because it'll save you a ton of time and make sure that you're always doing exactly what you need to do. Let's see. Can we do additional reps? Absolutely. Do as many as you can. Just make sure you do them right. It's far more important to do quality reps than quantity. So let me just I want to do one test tonight just to make sure that this technology is going to work out for us. So I know that we can use this in the future. So is there anybody that wants to try and get some help live with the webcam? If there is, I think, as you do a speaker request, I can add you in here at the bottom. So I see 14 of you have already done it, but I want to do it now because I don't know if you were asking to do this or if you were asking to do something different. Oh, there's 6. Now we got some volunteers here. I don't know if this is, I think it's going this way. All right. I'm just going to grab one. We're going to grab Elizabeth. Let me see if this works. Where'd it go? Elizabeth. Okay. Oh, here we go. I got it. All right, Elizabeth, just bear with me. I'm going to send you an invite. And then hope that technology doesn't fail us. All right, you should have an invite, Elizabeth. So hopefully you see that. Oh, and by the way, while we're waiting for that to get jamming here, some of you guys were asking about the live view. So we do have the live view available still. So if you go on your screen, you should see an offer for the live view if you want to pick one up, because they really make certain that you can practice the right stuff. I do want to talk about that just briefly because it's really important to make certain when you're practicing this stuff that you're looking at both views, because here's what happens 9 times out of 10. So here I'm going to go and I'm going to look at myself just face on, and I'm going to start doing these. Actually, what I tend to see most often is working down the line. So I'm going to pretend that I'm looking down the line and I'm rotating back and I'm just checking from down the line that I can, if I had a mirror right here, that I was torquing correctly. And it feels like I'm turning pretty well. But now you guys can see from this perspective, from face on, it looks pretty wonky. I've lost my tilt. I've lost my axis tilt because I'm only looking from down the line, and this happens all the time. Now my right hip's sliding out, and so on and so forth. So make certain that you have something. Don't do a bunch of reps if you only have one mirror, you don't have an extra mirror or a camera or what have you. Make certain that you only do about 10 reps each time, and then turn and check it the other way, because it's really easy to start doing reps the wrong way. Elizabeth, did you get that invitation to be able to be a presenter? I don't see you. All right, we'll try. You don't see the invite. I'm not sure. Elizabeth, you should see it on the right-hand side of your screen. I'll come back to you in just a second. Let me try another one. Oops. All right, John, you are going to be the next runner-up. Let's try. And let me send you an invite. Hopefully you will see it. All right, John, let me know if you see an invite on the right-hand side of your screen to be a presenter. No, nothing from John. All right, we'll try one more. Martin. How about Martin? Do you see an invite? Let's see. Nobody's seeing the invite. It should show up on the right-hand side of your screen. When we tested it, that's how we did it. Let's see, who else we got? All right, I'm going to try one more, and then we'll have to send out a video to show you guys how to do this so that it makes it easier next time. So if we don't get to it tonight, it's perfectly okay. We'll make a video so we can show you guys exactly where it shows up on your screen on the right. So I sent a couple more invites. Oops. There. Let's see, John got an error. John, can you tell me what the error was? Here, Kirkland. Okay, Greg, who said it? Kirkland. All right, so send it here. I'm going to invite you right now. There are 6 people in the room or in the process of joining this room. All right, so it says you guys are trying to get on, but nobody could get in. All right, no worries. I'll spend a little extra time on the next one. I'll send out a video this week to show you guys where it shows up to make it easier, because it should show up just on the right-hand side of your screen where you see the icons there. You should be able to see it, but if not, I promise we'll do it again next time. We'll make sure we make it really simple. So before we close up today, I want to make sure that you know exactly what to practice, because this is so important. This is the foundation, not just your setup, but the rotation correctly in the backswing is huge. So if we get this right, we literally have the hardest stuff of the backswing licked. And I know it seems kind of crazy, right? That the backswing is so important, but believe it or not, there's actually more checkpoints for the backswing than anything else, because the downswing stuff, as we get into the transition and the post-up move, they're shockingly simple. And that's what's super cool about this drill, is that we're going to be able to take all of your confusion, all of the things, all the swing thoughts, all the stuff rattling around in your brain, and boil it down into just one simple move in the transition and one simple thing in the downswing post-up move. And that's going to make everything fall into place. So any more questions before we wrap up? I want to make sure that you guys have plenty of time. As I mentioned, if you guys are interested in the live view, we have that up there on the screen for you and offer. Also, there's a quick little 2-question survey after you get out of the webinar tonight. It's just asking for your feedback, because I want to make sure that I get everything perfect for you guys. I want to make sure that this is the best experience you guys have ever had in golf instruction. I want to make sure you get everything you're looking for out of this. So I need your feedback. So please feel free to share your thoughts, good and bad. So I want to make sure this is perfect for you guys, and of course going forward for others. You guys are on the ground floor here helping me create this program. So I really, really appreciate that, and I really appreciate all the feedback. So if you guys get a chance to answer those, I'd really appreciate it. If no other questions, Dean, how to see this again? You guys will, since you all registered, you will receive an email with the replay link. So check that as soon as I close this off in just a moment. You're going to send it. You're going to get an email with the link, so you'll be able to watch it again right away. So yeah, replay link will be going out. You're welcome, you guys. Next session Saturday, absolutely. You're welcome, Chris. More, thank you guys, appreciate it. All right, guys, thank you so much. I'm super stoked. So hopefully, again, share your feedback with us. We want to make this exactly what you're looking for. So hope you guys had a good time. You know exactly what to work on, and I'll see you guys Saturday morning. Take care.